Palworld. And just by making that the first word of this podcast, I've increased the reach of this episode by about 1,000-fold. No, I'm just kidding. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Maximum News. I'm your host, as always, your friendly neighborhood Simpsons kin, Max Derrat, and I'm joined, as always, by Sybsidian of the Triple S League. Holy crap, got a lot of stuff to get into, and we would be remiss if we didn't make this the first story of today. The aforementioned Palworld. Oh my god, Syb. I mean, it seems so obvious now that it's happened, but, like, who would have thought that combining Pokemon and guns would lead to one of the greatest success stories in, at least in recent memory.
I'll tell you who never thought of it.
Nintendo.
Nintendo never clearly thought of it. You know, the dumbest thing is that for the past little while, for the past few years, like for I think almost a decade now, so not a few, obviously, people have been asking for a slightly more grown-up version of Pokemon where you have a giant open world and you could just do crazy stuff in it.
Yeah.
And I distinctly remember Nintendo having one of these meetings with pitch people who were suggesting something essentially sort of like Fortnite with Pokemon.
Yeah.
And I believe Nintendo said that it would be a $400 million investment and would probably take a decade to do. Well, Palworld was made in 3 years with an initial investment of $10,000. And let me get this right. 3 days, not 3 months, not 3 years, not, 3 decades, 3 days after launch, there was a full conversion mod converting all of the pals into Pokemon from the series, also replacing all of the main, like the player characters with Ash and variations of main characters, and all bosses in the game with other bosses from the Pokemon series.
Yeah, I was watching Electabuzz taking bullets to the chest the other day, yeah.
I am, and this is a reminder, big companies move too slow. They're too stupid. They're too slow, and they are so without imagination that most innovation, not all innovation, but most innovation we're going to see in the gaming field over the next 10 years is going to come from small indie developers who are not answering to a giant board of people who take 5 years to make a decision on trying to get into a new game that is now 5 years out of date and out of the limelight. I can't wait to see all the new Vampire Survivor games that will be coming out in 10 years from now from EA and all these other big companies, with the exception of maybe Microsoft and Blizzard. Maybe. We'll see with that. That's still up in the air.
Right. Yeah, we got other stuff that we're going to talk about in regards to how Nintendo is involved in all this and how they're going to respond to it, because there is some legitimate reasons and also some illegitimate reasons for them to be upset about all this. But let's just talk about the general success that Palworld has experienced over the last... Christ, it's not even been a week. When did this come out? Last Thursday? I think? Yeah, okay, last Thursday. So guys, check these numbers out, all right? Over the course of 4 days, Palworld, and keep in mind, this game is only released in early access. It is not a complete game. It's only in early access on Steam. It has sold 6 million copies in 4 days, selling 2 million copies in the first 24 hours. Here's another one. The peak player counts on Steam, it is currently at number 2 in all of Steam's history. 1.8 million peak player count. It just surpassed Counter-Strike 2. PUBG is at number 1 with 3.2 million. I don't see how it's ever going to pass that or anything will, but maybe one day. It's ridiculously impressive. Saib, you were talking about budget and how the initial investment was $10,000. From the information that I was able to gather, the budget of this game by the time it was released was about 6.7 million American dollars.
Some of that, as I understand, because there was an interview with Japanese a Japanese TV studio interviewed the CEO and lead dev. I believe there was two of them. I might be wrong on that. I read a transcript, so that the transcript was mostly covering the information covered. It didn't really cover who was speaking. So
Right.
I'm just gonna take it on their end. Again, you can probably find the transcript online. This was like yesterday and or this morning. So like back it up 2 days when this video comes out, and you should be able to find it. And basically, a lot of them took like a lot of the developers who were on the game were working two jobs. Were still like were working a main job and doing this essentially on the side. A lot of the developers who were involved, because a lot of them came in, and most of them came in with little to no experience whatsoever, and they learned how to develop games and how to use these tools. They started with Unity, and then halfway through they switched to Unreal because it was just Unity was
Sure.
too laggy. But in Unreal they had to have they split up the whole team into two groups, and the one developer who was familiar with it taught half of the group, and the other guy who was the CEO taught the other group how to use it, and that's how they rebooted the game in the middle of production. And essentially, like, these people learn from the ground up day one.
Yeah.
So, wow, amazing.
Yeah. And it just
Nobody has an excuse.
another reason why everybody should switch to Unreal, that amazing engine. But just to contrast with what you're saying about how, the proposal to Nintendo about how that would cost $400 million. Yeah, they made it for almost 1/100th of that. And
And that wasn't these guys. I want to clarify that. That wasn't these guys. This has been other companies pitching to Nintendo for a long time. So
Right. No, yeah. Thank you for making that clarification. In the last 4 days, if we're going by the right prices here, they have made $171 million in 4 days just from this. Oh my God. And this isn't the best thing of all, but it's one of the best things of all. One of the most important things is that the game is being very well received on Steam right now. I'm looking at Steam right now. 93% of the reviews that have been left for this game have been positive, out of 63,710 so far. And then, the most important thing of all, at least in my opinion, we were sort of alluding to this just a moment ago, this game sends a message to Nintendo. Saib, Pokemon, despite this game, is still one of the greatest entertainment franchises, one of the most lucrative franchises, one of the most beloved franchises in the history of mankind. But because of that, it has led to some, I think you can aptly call it laziness on behalf of Nintendo as the publishers, and especially Game Freak as the developers. I hope that because the makers of Palworld were able to do this so inexpensively and make everybody so happy, that it will sort of light a fire under their asses to innovate in a way that will make everybody happy. And hopefully, because this is something that I've wanted for a very long time, it will make them finally get around to making a Pokemon MMO. Because if there's anything to sort of put the people behind Palworld back in their place, it's the announcement of some sort of Pokemon MMO that will stop the entire world in a way that makes the whole Pokemon Go phenomenon look like child's play, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So,
which again, people have been asking for so long.
I want it so bad.
And they really haven't. And I honestly think that, I honestly think that there's a way that they can incorporate it with Pokemon Go, not directly with the game, but interact with some of these interactable elements.
Yeah. They've done stuff like that in the past. They had that Let's Go Pikachu or whatever the hell it is. It's something you attach to your it's a little device that came out when the original Pokemon games were coming out, where you could take a Pokemon in your game with you. And as you're walking around, it's sort of like they're gaining experience points while you're not playing the game, which is cool. But something like that, yeah. But sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that the smartest thing they could do is We've clearly there are clearly some issues with having real world locations tied to locations in doing like game stuff. But I think there is a way that they could tweak that by essentially creating like a double planet, like a double Earth,
Hmm.
and then then every person is shifted in their actual like physical space unless they know or have family that they can tie like in a family account to. And then that way you would be able to create like new different cities and then have that react off of person's actual location so that their real location is not actually the location
Yeah.
and in the world. And then you can create completely different geography. If you want to have like a planet full of like tropical islands, every place is a small tropical island, sort of mimicking like southern Japan. It's like that would be brilliant, and that would really start to create the social element that you could then really see taking off essentially.
Oh
So
yeah.
so stuff like that. That's the only way that I think they're going to come up with something groundbreaking, and that's not just the same old scene. Oh, you log into an MMO server and it's got 15,000 shards and it's the same city, small city block essentially. That the kind of stuff that real current day MMOs have issues with. It's like they need to think outside the box, and this is what I mean by these indie companies and indie developers coming up with the ideas that shake the ground. Now, this isn't a wholly like brand new
No.
idea.
Right.
It's
Right.
very similar, but it's like in order to compete with that, Nintendo has to go above and beyond expectations and do something completely new. Something absolutely groundbreakingly new. That's what needs to happen. That's how they have to react to this. If they get caught up in trend chasing, or if they get caught up in the idea that, oh well, they're gonna try and sue these guys to take them down, and then just kind of replicate something that's not as creative, it's like that's just going to cause them to fall even harder essentially.
Yeah.
And that's going to expand upon all of their existing problems and make everything worse. So they've really got to look at this, and really got to say, right, we didn't think of Pokemon with guns. Like similar ideas for like World Scope had been pitched at them before, and they've thought about it before, and they've always said, well, it's just too hard. Well, clearly it's not. So they really got to think outside the box, come up with something that's actually legitimately new, or it could be in 15 years from now we're all talking about PALS 4
Right.
and all the new stuff that's coming out with that. So I hope they're going to look at this, challenge themselves to do something bigger and better like they've done with Zelda and a couple other things. So yeah.
Yeah, just take away some of Game Freak's creative autonomy for a little bit. Just go in there, slap them all upside the head, and like, look, these guys are kicking our asses at the moment. We don't want that to continue. We gotta innovate so that way we got the message from Scarlet and Violet. People weren't very happy with that. Let's take a year off or two and then come back swinging. And I think they can. Now, we'll see whether or not they'll do that. One thing that I can pretty much guarantee, and you sort of alluded to this with your comment about things being new or not. One thing that they are probably looking into right now is their legal options, because as much as people are loving this game, as much as it is a worldwide phenomenon, I do sympathize with Nintendo in at least one reasonable respect. Saib, companies got to protect their intellectual property. Because it not only does it make business sense, it makes moral sense. Because when you do that, if you don't do that, people can use it against you and it loses its value, right? With regards to Palworld, people have been noting all over social media that a lot of the monsters in Palworld look similar to the Pokemon in the Pokemon games. Now, just because they look similar, that isn't necessarily grounds for there to be any controversy. People decry plagiarism, not necessarily. But I have seen some compelling stuff online where people will take the 3D models of Palworld monsters and Pokemon monsters, overlay them, and it's almost a one-to-one similarity with regards to certain appendages. So maybe the legs will look the same, but nothing else will. It's almost like, and this is just a theory, don't
The
quote me on this.
worst one I've seen is the wolf. It
Yes.
literally looks like they traced over it. Like it's like the hair is slightly different, but everything else is like spot on. I don't know the name of that one on either side of it.
Yeah, so that's a good example of one. There are some like the most prominent one that I've seen going around is people taking the Pokemon Meowth and showing how this other monster in Palworld has the same eyes and teeth. But the eyes and teeth are just so generic you can get away with that. But there are other examples where it's like, and I was just saying this a second ago, this is just a theory. It's like they took the 3D models from the Pokemon games themselves, ran them through an AI generator to hopefully make them different enough, and then they just said, well, that's good enough. Let's throw it in the game. If that's what happened, I don't know that that's what happened. It's just a theory. But if that's what happened, there might be some legal ground with which Nintendo can sue Palworld, right? Because they're using their assets as a part of their game's creation. I think that is legal grounds to do that.
It is going to be difficult to prove.
Yes.
So the way that this stuff works is like parody is legally allowed in certain cases as far as like financial gain. You can't parody, an entire product and then ship that, because that's just shipping the same product. But if you make a parody of it, you'd kind of a joke of it, sort of like those really bad comedies from that Hollywood made where they kind of mocked other popular movie genres.
Oh, like Scary Movie.
It's like Scary Movie, and then the one they did with Spider-Man, with one of Leslie Nielsen's last movies. It was really like it's like really obvious. Is like, oh no, I was bit by a dragonfly bug who gave me all the powers of what a spider can do.
Right.
So stuff like that. It's like, yeah, that's kind of tricky, but it is kind of weird that if you like come up with like a generalized sketch, so if somebody's like, ooh, that looks good, and then they kind of sketch that concept out, as long as they could prove that they sketched it out and then kind of built it from the ground up, and you didn't copy anything like hyper exactly, and this is where the argument will be, then they can't really get sued for it.
Right.
But if you copy something verbatim, so in one particular case that I know a lot more about is like a guy utilized, essentially he cropped a hairstyle from the main protagonist and used the same hairstyle in his animated videos on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just the hair. The rest of the body had a general similarity, but was completely different. But that hair, that the way that it was brushed, and then the way that stood out, that was geometrically identical.
Right, but that's my point in regards to some of the appendages of the PAL monsters.
But appendages is a little bit different than a style. So if somebody could copyright appendages, humans, dogs, wolves, that kind of stuff would be, that would all be owned by one company. It's like, you can't make a game about humans because humans have the same appendages as our game that featured humans. So that's where that kind of goes. So there is the abnormal monsters, the abnormal pals. That's where they could most likely make the win. But if they're talking about a wolf and they've drawn two similar wolves, it's really easy to draw similar wolves. Now it's not easy to draw an almost identical wolf, which is what we have in this case. But still, I don't think that one will fly through. I think it'll be some of the non like standard monsters, the monsters that aren't based on some kind of a realistic thing at all. Like,
right.
Yeah. That's where it might be. Now, again, I'm not a lawyer. That's just my like kind of the way that I see how these lawsuits have worked in the past, and it's a lot easier to stick somebody on something that's like, it's like a slime monster that's very hyper specific, and then somebody else has copied that verbatim. Or in like, there used to be a lot of Warcraft clones on the app stores, like
Right.
games where it was like, hey, here's this dark, Illidan ripoff. It's clearly an Illidan ripoff. And then, hey, there's clearly a Jaina ripoff, and clearly and they've got 20 other characters that are clear ripoffs of characters from World of Warcraft. And they copy and pasted those with slight, small, subtle things. That took Blizzard and Activision, that took them about like 5 years to get those finally, like to go through lawsuits to finally like put a hammer down on that.
Oh, wow.
And that was
Okay.
very, very difficult. And that was them taking their whole lineup of characters, essentially copying them, doing like a 5 to 10% style change on them. That was it, 5 to 10%, and then just copying their entire roster of main characters. So that's how difficult they had it. We'll see how difficult Nintendo has this with the PALs. Some of them are, some of them aren't. But again, where it's like, no, we drew a wolf. Just because the wolf has general similarities doesn't mean it's the,
Yeah.
So that's where they probably won't have success, but they will have success in the non-standard creatures, the creatures that you only see and you don't really have a comparative thing from somewhere else that you'll find in both games. That's a little too, similar,
Right.
So yeah, that's the tricky part.
It's an interesting debate. There's a lot of reasonable opinions being put on either side of the debate. We'd love to hear what you guys think in the comment section below. Have you guys managed to play Palworld yet? I haven't. I would love to. I have other games that I naturally have to get to first. Plus Persona 3 is coming out next week, so I probably won't have time to play it even then. But yeah, let us know in the comment section below, guys. All right.
Now, I got two quick questions to follow that up with. The one before I forget it is Persona 3. Is that the one where they added a new main protagonist choice, or am I thinking of a different one? Because I got that mixed up before.
I honestly don't know, man. I think all they're doing.
Well, we'll see when that comes out next week then. So
Yeah.
then, just quickly, did you want to talk about the like we talked about the reasonable complaints? Did you want to talk about the unreasonable complaints about Palworld at all? The more excessive claims of
people just defending their corporate masters. I mean, come on, that's something that gamers have done forever and continue to do.
I meant more the wild accusations of slavery and animal abuse.
Oh, yeah. What? Yeah. It's like, have you guys ever heard of Cult of the Lamb? Come on.
Have you ever heard of... no, sir. Excuse me. Have you ever heard of Grand Theft Auto? Somebody's like, "Oh my goodness, you're beating that poor animal in that video game."
Yeah, but they only care when the animals are cute, Sybe.
Yeah, these people did not make a fuss, as far as I'm aware, of some of the games where you run around driving over pedestrians, for crying out loud.
Yeah, they didn't care about the Pokemon games where you catch Pokemon and then keep them imprisoned inside these little balls.
Yeah, forever.
Hello. Right, forever. And they're your slaves.
The insanity of that. I just want to point out that it is very loud and it's very ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it's the sign of hypocrites at their best. So I think that most people are sort of on that train where it's like, yeah, no, that's a ridiculous assertion. And where were you when why do you not why here's a question. Why don't these people boycott like Stellaris or any of these like grand strategy Civ games?
Yeah.
Where it's like, I've just exterminated my fourth people or alien group in a war and taken over their cities and renamed all their cities. It's like, you'd think they'd be more upset about that kind of a concept of genocide and less about what games make. And there was a very interesting story about a woman in the UK being questioned by the police because of mods that she had in her Skyrim game.
What?
So we don't want to talk about it in the specifics because it gets it goes south real fast. But yeah, their police were pulling this woman in for questioning because a guy who was hitting on her at a party reported her for Skyrim mods on her Skyrim game on her laptop that she brought to the party and inadvertently left on. After he got shut down by her, he went then over and looked at her mods and saw some spicy mods, the ones that MXR used to cover a lot, and now he called the police, and then the police seized her laptop, told her that they wouldn't give it back to her for at least 3 years while they do the investigation to see if she committed any crimes by downloading mods for her Skyrim game.
That's a long time to do some quote unquote investigation.
Yeah, I have a good source on this that the police aren't actually interested in a crime. They're just amazed that she got 270 mods to work without conflicting and causing a game crash, and that's why they want to hold it. They need to figure out how to copy that over to get their Skyrim games to run that good.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I could never get the skeleton mod to work on my computer. All right. Yeah, it's a huge story, guys, and yeah, those people are great. They're not great. Sorry, they're idiots. Yeah, leave any thoughts in the comment section below. We do got to move on though. It was a big story, but we are nearly half an hour into this, and we do have other big stuff that we got to talk about. So last Thursday, I believe, was the Xbox Developer Direct. That was the 18th, right?
Yes, I was sick and I did not get to stream it. In fact, I haven't even been able to watch it yet.
Oh, okay.
I literally was passed out. So
okay, so you haven't seen any of it?
Not really. No.
Oh, okay. Crap. Okay, so I'm just gonna warn you guys in advance. I haven't seen anything on the Ara History Untold stuff. Then, unfortunately, it just doesn't interest me. But I can't comment on the other 4 things. Overall, the Xbox Developer Direct, I was pretty happy with, not in respect to the games itself, but my opinions vary on each of the games, but the way that the games were presented, I was relatively happy with. I love it when we get to sort of look behind the scenes at the way that these games are created, the technical work that goes into it, the camaraderie behind the scenes. It's really, really heartwarming, but also interesting for me, especially as somebody who used to work in the creative industries, particularly in sound. I love the stuff that they were talking about in regards to music, and especially with Hellblade, and the way they handle sound in that game is just fantastic. But let's talk about the actual games themselves. First and foremost, obviously, we got to start with the Indiana Jones stuff. Syb, you haven't seen the trailer for the Indiana Jones game?
I did not.
Okay.
I completely missed out. I'm so annoyed. I'm going through the list right now, and I'm really happy. I already added Visions of Mana onto my wish list.
Yeah.
That looks great.
Yeah. Okay.
Keep going.
I'll talk about that in a second as well. But in regards to Indiana Jones, spoiler alert, it's Harrison Ford's face, which is cool. It's not Harrison Ford's voice, though. It's actually Troy Baker. But, Syb, I had no idea it was Troy Baker when I heard his voice. He sounds so much like Harrison Ford. It was unbelievable hearing him do a Harrison Ford imitation. It was amazing. You've seen the Indiana Jones films, right? Obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Marcus is back. He's going to be in the game.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. I'm like, oh, okay, this is interesting.
Yeah, it's the trailer. Everything that the trailer showed us, it seems pretty okay. Imagine this: you try to picture what a modern day Indiana Jones game would be like, and then this trailer just gave it to you. It's not there's nothing terribly exciting about it. There's nothing bad about it. It's just okay, here you go. This is what you wanted. You're gonna get it. And I'm happy with that. The environments look great. It's back in the 1930s. You're going to be fighting Nazis again. or the I don't know. I'm not exactly sure. Like I know it takes place. They say this in the trailer. It takes place between Raiders of the Lost Ark and the Last Crusade in the timeline, so it's canon. But I don't know which exact year. But Indy's back punching Nazis, which is the hook of the entire franchise, as well as history and stuff. Yeah, and it's great. There's just one problem though, and I'm sure you've picked this up already if you're watching the trailer right now, Syb. It is strictly in first person.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and Syb,
the voice work is like
amazing.
It really makes me wonder if they've altered his voice slightly, like digitally, like somehow run it through an AI filter or something like that to make it sound, because he sounds like, it sounds a lot like young Harrison Ford. Yeah. Like he sounds a lot like Harrison Ford right now. He's got an old voice. You can tell he's got an old voice. Yeah. But that's not a bad thing. I think he's aged wonderfully. But dang, they nailed this like young, like early, first Indiana Jones-ish kind of voice. That seems like really like spot on, like really, really spot on. So that is very interesting.
Yeah, Troy Baker's a talented dude, man. Like I understand like thinking that it's like AI generated or something, but the dude has some pretty great chops as far as impression goes. His Chris Walken impression is freaking hilarious. Let's see. What else did I want to say? Yeah, aside from the fact that it's mostly in first person, except for like when he's on the whip and he's swinging around, which I understand, like some people being upset about that, especially in regards to Sybsidian, who has troubles with motion sickness.
Anybody with motion sickness, yeah. It's kind of a bummer.
But it's coming from the same people that did the most recent Wolfenstein games. Yes, that includes Youngblood, but the ones that preceded that were also amazing. And they seem to be nailing it as far as this game goes. And it can't be any worse than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, right? And I haven't seen Dial of Destiny, so I can't really comment on that. But yeah, it looks promising. And apparently we're going to be getting it this year, Syb. So yeah, it's definitely up there in my most anticipated games. Maybe in the top 5. Maybe it just breaches the top 5. Looks really, really solid. Okay. Let's move on. Obviously, my most anticipated game of the year still is Hellblade 2. They showed us a little bit more of this. Yep. It's, you said you played the first game, right?
Ash did a huge playthrough on the first game. I believe the majority of it's up on the channel, and he did a lot of content with it. So I don't want to take away from what he did. He really covered this game. And again, if you're looking for any guides and stuff like that, I think he made quite a few. So yeah, and it is something that really turned him on to Ninja Theory. So yeah, that's really good, and I'm really excited for that.
Yeah. So the original Hellblade is so damn good. If you haven't played it, you owe it to yourself to play it. It's one of those games where it's just like I cannot understand why somebody wouldn't play this. Or I cannot understand why somebody would play this and not enjoy it or get something meaningful out of it. It's just a wonderful experience. The problem is it's hard to talk about or showcase Hellblade in a way that you do most games. Because when you showcase most games, you can show a whole bunch of gameplay without really giving away too much about what the story's about or where things are going to go. Hellblade is different than that. It's more of an experience than a game. It's definitely a game. But it's less about combat and challenge, and it's more about just experiencing the world and the whole point of the story is trying to imagine what it's like to live with somebody with psychosis, and it's amazing. But because of all that, it's kind of hard to showcase what's going to be new about the game, aside from just showing a bunch of general images. And that's what they did. And everything looks great. The graphics look great. Melina Juergens is back playing Senua, and she's amazing. The one thing that we do know that's sort of going to be different is that whereas Senua was sort of on her own, basically, for the first game, she's going to be around actual living people, and they're sort of going to be going on her journey, dealing with her psychosis, and according to the trailer, there's going to be people that accept her and people that reject her, which I think will add a new interesting dynamic to what it's like to live with psychosis. Still my most anticipated game. And finally, Syb, We know when it's coming out, May 21st. So just it's the 23rd, so less than 4 months. My most anticipated game.
That was what surprised me, is that this is coming out early, which again is like, that was the thing last year where we had way too many games coming out in the last couple of months of 2023 and not nearly enough coming out, especially in that dead zone in around the April to July period, where it was Diablo 4, and it was because it had no competition. It did really, really well, and then it dropped off a freaking cliff as far as like retention goes, because when the better games came out in the latter half of the year, everybody was like, my goodness, this is just ridiculous how much these games are an improvement over that game. And we're going to see that with all these Diablo like games coming out soon, and they're going to crush any concept of like, it's going to be a bloodbath.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's move on. Visions of Mana. This game looks just like classic, like old school. Just the wonder and imagination that goes into playing games. Just being able to turn your brain off and just go into this fantastical world. That's what Visions of Mana looks like. Now, this is Square Enix, so I don't know. Maybe it'll be like at the level of Final Fantasy 16, or maybe it'll be at the level of a quality of like I don't know. What's a piece of crap that Square Enix has put ever? Final Fantasy 15. Let's just go with that. Maybe it'll be like that. I don't know. It is their first return to the Mana series in about 15 years. But what I did see looks charming. It's like a more cartoonish version of Tales of Arise, Tales of Berseria, the Tales of games. And I'm all about it. So, but beyond that, there's not really a whole lot else to say.
It's Trials of Mana came out, the reboot, obviously not the original, the reboot, the recreation. It was sort of a mix between, like, they didn't go around adding a ton of stuff to it. They just did a good job in, like, saying, here is this game, we're going to take the old one and we're just going to give it, from its original engine, we're going to give this brand new engine, all these brand new models, but a lot of the characters played exactly the same. Like, even down to like the second per second timing that you could do with abilities and combos and stuff like that, which they absolutely smashed out of the park in covering that. That came out on April 24th, 2020. And so here we are 4 years later. This is what they have done from there. And having played Trials of Mana a lot, and I have a lot of videos up on the channel covering like builds and classes and how to how to unlock them, what they do, how they function. I got to say, I'm looking at this. I'm hoping for the same thing. I'm hoping that Visions of Mana can really, really kind of grow off of that previous stuff. So we'll see. Coming out almost 4 years to the day, it looks like. Which is really, again, really exciting. I do love the Mana series. It is something from my childhood, just as much as Zelda was, and that was because you got to play different characters and you got to focus on different characters. If you wanted your main character to be Valkyrie, or if you wanted your main character to be the sorceress, it's like you had that chance to just swap over and do that. And that kind of concept was really, really good, because Link was good, but Link was a solitary single story that didn't have a lot of dialogue in it. Famous, silent protagonist, right? Yeah. So yeah. Well, I'm really, really excited to see where this one goes.
Coming out summer of this year, and that and Hellblade sort of taking up that part of the year. Finally, there's something in that period where I'm actually really looking forward to it. So where it normally just seemed barren. Now, finally, I don't know what to make of Avowed. I was actually really curious to hear your thoughts in case you saw it, because you're the Skyrim guy, you're the Bethesda guy. And this isn't made by Bethesda, it's made by Obsidian, but people have been treating Avowed as sort of like what we can, like, the closest thing that we're going to get to Elder Scrolls 6 before Elder Scrolls 6
I'm
comes
actually
out.
more of an Obsidian guy than
Right, but
than a
are
than
you
a
more old
yeah.
school Obsidian or like new
Oh
school?
yeah, way old school Obsidian.
Right. So my problem is like I agree with you. Obsidian, old school Obsidian, their storytelling is just some of the greatest in the history of the medium. But my problem here is that with Avowed, it looks like it looks worse than my modded Skyrim does.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, okay, the combat is a slight step up from the way that it looks in Skyrim and handles in Skyrim, but crap, there's certain combat mods that you can download for Skyrim where you can play the game like a Dark Souls game. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it looks fine, but it's like, would I rather play Avowed, or would I rather go and play Skyrim again modded, or would I rather go and finally beat Starfield, which I haven't had the time to play? There's nothing really about Avowed that sort of stands out that makes it new or unique or original from other games like it. I'll probably still end up playing it if it comes out and I hear some decent reviews, but at the moment it's just like, man, I was expecting a little bit more. So I don't know. Did you happen to be watching the trailer while I was just talking?
Yeah, no, I've seen the trailer for it, and
Okay.
I've been keyed into this game for a long time.
Yeah.
The biggest warnings and what I really hoped would happen with Microsoft buying them out is that they wouldn't feel the need to limit themselves, and that they would go after the easy wins that they would need to do to compete with the likes of, Skyrim and now like Baldur's Gate. Like, you're expecting a good
Dragon,
story.
yeah.
So there were a few things that I wanted from the initial like showcase, from the initial concept. Is like I wanted of course, I always ask for this third person perspective. Because if you are creating a single player RPG story and you're not including third person, unless there's a very, very hyper specific reason for you to be doing only first person, I think, and I'm sorry, I think you're an idiot. I think that third person perspective for telling a narrative story is really important, because not everybody, not even a majority, can treat the game like they are playing that that they're in the game, that it's their perspective,
Yeah.
that it's them in the experience, doing what they need to do, and interacting with the characters and that kind of stuff. Most people play it from a perspective of watching the hero character. And again, this is The Witcher, right? This is a bunch of other games where it's like this is very, very important that you give the ability for people to connect with the story in how they connect with the story. And it's not like, oh, the third person perspective people, that's only 5 to 10% of the population, who cares about them. It's not that. It's that when players are engaging in RPGs, deep story, having the character, like watching your character that you've made, watching them react to the stuff is actually really important to the story. And we've seen this in every game in the last few years that is attempted to do this. And the more of a reliance that you have on first person, the less the overall community connects with the story. It's not rocket science, it's basic math, it's basic majority. Why do people play through Baldur's Gate with, a different main character each time? Are they just, they're just spastic and they don't know what their avatar is? No, it's because they like watching the characters interact. Why does first person film not work? Because it doesn't, because that's not what people are there to see.
Right.
It's disturbing. It's it forces you out of the immersion in many cases. Not all of them, but it's a significant amount. I don't think that the people who play through RPGs first person only are more than probably 30% of the population. And I think that's giving them a lot, because then they wouldn't be playing games like The Witcher, they wouldn't be playing games like Mass Effect, they wouldn't have found those as exciting as they are. It's very rare when you have the option for both that you hear somebody in the comments, going, "Oh yeah, no, this game sucks because it's got third person in it and it's a story, it's a heavy RPG. I just want them to be in first person only." I have never seen that comment, aside from one person who was basically trolling.
Right.
And so this is what I was hoping, is that Xbox would give them enough cash and give them enough time to add third person camera to it, so that they could really model the face, so you could see the emotion on your character when you're making decisions, and give proper companions. And that is something that we apparently do not have. So you don't have anybody to go on an adventure with. You are a solo adventurer who has general talking scenes with a handful of NPCs in a handful of locations, and then that's about it. And again, I'm disappointed with this, because at the beginning of the trailer for this game, they've got the camera swirling around the main character's armor and his foot or his feet, and doesn't he look so badass?
Yeah.
Yes, and you will never see that ever again after that 2 seconds of intro at the beginning of the game when he was walking off the boat. That's it. That's your experience with seeing your character, and again. And interacting with the world in a character-to-character way, because all the NPCs that you're going to be engaging with are strictly there to give you a quest and then to move you along to the next quest, and that's it. And that's where I think that's where I think this is going to be a little on the dry side. I think the combat will be fine. People who want to, run around and smash, it's like, yeah, it's gonna be great. Will they have good combos and stuff like that? Oh, I'm sure they will. I'm positive the gameplay is gonna be like good, but the RPG is not going to be good.
Yeah.
And that is what makes the replayability such an important metric in this. Because replayability in this type of game is massively important. It's so important. And if you don't have it, you don't have a game.
Yeah. Yeah. Aside from the combat, which I like the idea of, well, there's an incentive for you to try all different types, so you can use guns, wands, and melee weapons. But is it going to... The only way I'm going to ever want to do that is if you clearly make it so that you can't really play the game any other way. Because if there's a way where I can just use a bow and arrow the entire time, that's all I'm going to do. Right, so it's not enough.
We'll see. Yeah, we'll see, and it could be that the loot system will play a big factor into that. So yeah,
we'll see. It's coming out this. I don't know. Actually,
no, just 2024. They don't have an actual release date left, and
gotcha.
I think they'll probably. I don't think we'll hear about that day release probably until summer.
Sure,
at the big games fests.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, well, that's all the stuff I wanted to talk about in regards to Xbox Direct. Did you guys have any opinions on that? Do you disagree with any of the stuff that we said? Let us know in the comment section below. Okay, we kind of have to rifle through these because we're almost at the 50-minute mark.
These are all quick stories, so I'll let's tackle them here. Actually, let's tackle them backwards.
Sure.
Sony has rumored that there's going to be quite a few games moving to PC this year. The original rumor was that there was going to be a ton, like nearly 20. That seemed a little bit ridiculous. The only rumors that I can find that are more or less kind of like focusing on this.
Where are these rumors coming from?
Just a ton of different places.
Okay.
So again, these rumors, don't take them with a huge grain of salt, or sorry, rather take them with a small, very small grain of salt. But GT7.
That's Gran Turismo, in case you guys don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Ghosts of Tsushima.
Nice.
Demon Souls.
Nice.
God of War Ragnarok. And what is Trio 2? TIOU2.
Oh,
What is
The
that?
Last of Us Part 2.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah, those
I was
all.
like so confused. I was like, the hell is this one? It's not a game I remember very fondly, so I don't make a
Yeah,
point in remembering it.
those all
Um,
seem pretty like standard. I imagine what's going to happen is
yeah,
that next year, after Last of Us season 2 airs, they're going to do what they did after Last of Us season 1 airs, where they
yeah.
release it on the PC, and then there's going to be a whole bunch of bugs. And then I made this joke to Cyb. I mean, Demon Souls on PC sounds dope,
Mhm.
but you just know for a goddamn fact that as soon as that gets announced, people are just going to lose their ever loving mind about the fact that we still don't have Bloodborne on PC, and
Yeah,
I'm with them.
yeah.
But
And
anyways,
and so this is a reminder that PlayStation has been playing for their console and basically their console alone. There's a bunch of games and a bunch of tech and a bunch of things that they have in some other games that they just have no interest in bringing to the PC because they don't view that as part of their market, period.
right.
And it's so weird. Like honestly, it's so weird that they think that like that, and it honestly makes me scratch my head and go, okay, I don't know why they're doing this. Valve has clamped down on a bunch of fan mods and fan games. So these are games made within the IPs that Valve own that have not
Oh,
been directly approved of.
yeah.
So they've had to do a bunch of DMCA takedowns on videos and projects and send cease and desist orders out. And the word is that they don't like doing this. For a long time, they have tried to find ways to not do this, but how legal law works, especially in places like the States, is that if you do not make an active attempt at protecting your IP, then you don't have the ability to object when somebody just straight up steals your IP. So
Right.
this is an unfortunate crackdown that they weren't wanting to do. They didn't want to have to do this, but they are at the point now where they kind of had to because there was a couple projects coming out. And yes, unfortunately, this means that some of the mods for these things have gotten caught up in this crossfire, and that's really sad because Valve doesn't spend a lot of their energy working on improvements to Team Fortress. That has been coming from the modding community for the longest time.
Yeah.
And now, unfortunately, those improvements will have to go basically sort of more or less bye-bye because they have to shut down the overarching lots of stuff that people are doing, including creating a couple of like full-on games with entirely made with all of the assets of Team Fortress 2,
Yeah. Wasn't
which
one of
is
them a prequel to Portal?
um yeah, basically like these are all of the projects that the community has been working on, because up till now, Valve has said, yeah, just don't go too far, but unfortunately some people went
Too
way
far.
too far
Yeah.
and were releasing games that you had to buy whilst using all of the assets from Valve. And
You
the
can't do
smart thing,
that.
I think, yeah, I think the smart thing that they should do is they should open up the engine, and put out like Valve should put out their own game engine that
Yeah.
has all of this stuff in it, and then give you a license to work off of that. That would be the best and easiest solution.
Oh God,
But
yeah.
yeah, but it may not be an easy one. So that's how that's going. So okay, so last story here: layoffs, and especially layoffs concerning Riot Games,
Mm.
which have come out really bad today. And it's not just Riot; it's a whole bunch of companies. The game industry itself is predicting that 2024 will be the year of closures, studio closures, and massive firings. And this is really bad for a lot of reasons. Now, we've covered that as far as the people who are involved in the microtransaction, teaching the companies or making it so that the companies market their games to children with highly addictive, high pressure microtransactions, directly encouraging kids to essentially steal their parents' credit card info, put it in, max that out, and then refusing to give any kind of, to work with them, the parents at all in getting any of that money back. Those people can all, like, you know, try not to say something overly bad here. Those people, I'm glad they're getting fired. Those people are scum. They've ruined a lot of games, you know, and I want to point out that Genshin Impact should have been and could have been the game of the year when it came out if they hadn't involved all those damn microtransactions. The whole system, it wasn't just that those microtransactions ruined the game. The game has been stifled in its growth and potential because of how greedy it is and how the entirety of the gaming experience revolves around that. And again, I'm not just pointing out Genshin Impact, I'm pointing out all the games from EA to Activision to all of these other studios and big companies, Ubisoft. For years now, they've been creating problems in the game and then selling you the solution in the form of microtransaction. But the solution is you have to spend 800 crystals, but you can only buy the crystals in 500 or 750 packs and 2,500 packs. So to buy the solution to the problem, you have to make at least 2 transactions or one large one. And then you're left with all this extra currency, and they bombard you with, hey, buy this for this amount. They buy that for that amount. Oh, look, you have 500 currency left over, but there's a sale on an item that's 550 currency. And stuff like that has been ruining the experience for gamers, has been turning gaming into, in a lot of cases, into a second job. So those people, I'm glad they're all gone. In fact, I think and I hope that they're all the ones who are fired first. And I hope we never, ever see them in gaming or in polite society ever again. I hate being cruel, but that's how I feel about microtransactions. They are so vile. They are so predatory that I think morally, objectively evil, because they look at the situation and go, how can we abuse our customers the most? That's the first question that enters their head on any given day. And I think they're disgusting. But now let's talk about quickly talk about the core issue of the hirings, of the layoffs. And I'll cover Riot kind of a little bit separately from that. But Riot and all these companies have run into the same problem. And that is during COVID, they overhired. All of these studios overhired. And a lot of the hires were not exceptionally passionate, which is sad because what the people did who got into these companies, who were not always, and this is a small percentage of them, they were not pulling their weight within the company, meaning that for every dollar that the company was spending on them, they were making them back like 50 cents to 80, 50 to 80 cents. The company can't sustain that. That's just them giving you more, money every day. In order for you to be useful, you need to at least make them an extra 10 cents to 15 cents on every dollar that they spend. Some companies have a smaller gain from that, and then other companies, it's really hard to price that in. It's like, how do some positions kind of pay for that? But when money gets tight, and now money is tight, because all these gaming companies got huge amounts of investments, and now those investments are calling due, and that was, again, the COVID economy, especially in video games, was like, hey, this is the new solution. This is the new replacement for going to the theater. And all of these, tons of people invested heavily in it. Companies that weren't affected by this were companies who stayed solvent, who didn't barter out their soul for money to make investments and do stuff. So you have a company like Larian who doesn't have any of these problems because they grew within their means, and then they put the game out and had a great game because they listened to the community. But other companies, even a company like Riot, where they did do the right thing in a lot of cases, they really did try to make themselves really, really good. Even they're suffering because, again, they sold themselves to Tencent. Tencent has lost an enormous market share in the last less than 2 months. In less than 2 months, the company went from 327 per stock down to 262 per stock. That's not good. It's not like, it's not half.
Right.
Not like some of the Chinese companies that have taken a massive hit because, lo and behold, microtransactions got targeted by the government and basically told no. I don't know how that happened in China first when, other countries should have been doing that ages ago. It seems like almost like these politicians don't really care about the kids.
Yep.
But and I'm not saying that China is the savior here on this. They don't want their kids playing games because they think it's a waste of time, and they want their kids to be, preparing to work for the state for the rest of their life and not waste their time on frivolous things like playing video games or, creating art or, having any sense of freedom. That's
or knowing
not good.
what's good about life. Yeah.
Exactly. So there's a huge problem with that. However, Riot, I do want to give them a big nod here in the fact that, yes, their CEO, I think he did lie a little bit when he said that this wasn't about the shareholders. Their parent company has just lost 20% of their net worth. So I think that's probably a little bit of a lie, but they're going out of their way to try and make this as painless as possible, including severance for 6 months of the salary for everybody who's getting fired. They're giving a cash bonus based off of their productivity. Again, really nice. Continued health benefits for up to 6 months. That's also very nice. They're continuing to give them a play fund and a wellness fund for the duration of the year, which again is wow. Company share equity, so that they meet the shares equity, so that means that these people can, if they can line up another job quite quickly, they can actually take all that bonus money and turn it directly into stock options, which again, that's really, really nice. They've got they get to keep all of their personal computers. They get career support, Riot assistance program, visa support for anybody who moved to different countries, and they get to use their Riot email until they basically for about a year-ish, depending on the situation, which is really, really important, because when you're fired from if you're working for some big corporate overlord and you and all the staff associated with you are all terminated, you're just suddenly you go to make an email and you're locked out of your email, and you have to learn via social media that you're now fired, and that you have to and nobody will talk to you for probably another week or two, and the next day when you show up to work, it's locked.
Yeah.
And you have to then deal with that instant. It's terrible. It's a terrible practice. So I will give Riot the benefit of the doubt, saying, hey, that is about 10,000 times more support than most of these other companies have given their staff that they've overhired on. And yes, unfortunately, I think there's a lot of people who get caught up in that crossfire because of overhiring, poor employee work, and a bunch of other things.
Yeah.
And, it's kind of sad when I look at that. I know how much people work, how hard they work, and how much garbage they have to deal with. And then every once in a while you see these tech company employees posting, my day at work consisted of not doing any work for 4 hours, having one meeting for an hour, and then going into a playroom where I get to rest and have some mimosas while I sit around and watch movies. It's
that sounds like an exaggeration, but those videos actually exist, and that's exactly very accurate.
And that is, I think, the crux of the tech problem, is there were too many people expecting jobs to be like that, and not enough people who were like these employees at Palworld who said, we're going to work 2 jobs, because my pay, I'm not they're saying, hey, here's how much we're going to pay you, but we can't actually pay you this, so you're going to have to work 2 jobs while we work on this project. And you're going to have to trust me that I'm going to give you what you have earned down the road. Yeah.
And it looks like that promise paid off in spades, at least for them.
For them, it did, 100%. And there are a lot of other projects that find success like that. But that is not an easy thing to ask. That is not a smooth thing to ask. And I had a friend who was looking for a job at Riot. They had been trying to get it for years. And they almost got it. They were in the last round of hires, and they were told no. That person who got that job was fired yesterday. And this would have been like they would have packed up their life, moved halfway across the globe, settled down for a month, and then got fired. So I guess that's a small blessing because that sucks for people that have gone there. And again, that is terrible, and it's a myriad of problems and issues. And I'm going to be quite annoyed when I hear about, oh, Tencent's made $5 billion this year. I think that's going to be kind of annoying when you see that and then you see this. And it would have been easier if they had just kind of gone through and they really weeded out the bad apples, not fired people en masse.
Yeah.
Because Riot fired 11% of their entire staff. That's a lot. That's 1 in 10 people that at the company is now gone. So that's kind of huge. The only thing and this probably bodes well for their MMO that they have coming, nobody from the MMO that they're working on has been fired, which is very interesting. So they clearly have a lot of faith in that. They did kill off their Riot Forge, which was creating all those tiny little indie games that together were doing fine fiscally, but not fine enough to have that continued support and backing. So there's a bunch of indie games, which again, I really do think that that's a big mistake because that's where you're pushing. Yes, they don't sell big, they don't sell huge, but
that's where potential innovation lies.
Exactly. And I know, I met a guy who did investing in high risk investments. And he said that every 2 years or every 5 years, he spends $2 million investing in companies. And he'll invest in about 30 to 40 companies. And out of those 30 to 40 companies he invests in, giving anywhere between, $50,000 and $100,000. Out of those companies, almost all of them, usually all but 2, go bankrupt.
Yeah.
And the last 2 that managed to survive make him about $5 to $10 million.
Yep.
So that's where I think these companies are making bad decisions when it comes to things like this, because they're potentially killing off the one aspect of the indie side of their company that could very well come up with the next big thing. And yeah, you probably are going to have 40 failures. But in games, it's not about failing. Like the Ruined King and Song of Nunu, these weren't failures in the sense that they were bad games. They were niche games that didn't sell a lot in mass market. But they're still good games. It's like an art gallery. You don't want to fill it up with a single... Like imagine going to see... you want to go see the Statue of David, Statue of David or the Mona Lisa, right? So you want to go see the Mona Lisa. Are you going to be happy going to the museum to see just the Mona Lisa?
No.
Standing in line for like 3 hours to see just the Mona Lisa? There, you saw it, you're done, out? Or would you prefer walking around a museum that's full of thousands of wonderful artworks and you get to see a bunch of them that aren't in history books, but then you also get to see the Mona Lisa? So I think they made a mistake there. I think that that's a bad idea, and I think that they'll probably... Yeah, I think that's probably not good for the long term, but it's a thing that's kind of hard to process now. So
yeah, and it's something that a lot of companies are doing. They're just putting all their money behind their biggest franchises, which, it's sort of the thing that people are doing right now. But is it sustainable? Hell no. Not even something like as popular as Valorant or League of Legends is. Well, maybe League of Legends just because that's such a juggernaut like World of Warcraft. But I mean, look at a company like Blizzard. They had some of the greatest, most lucrative franchises ever, and look at where those things are right now. Thankfully, they're making somewhat of a comeback in regards to at least World of Warcraft. But yeah,
I think we're in a golden age of MMOs and a massive renaissance to it. I don't think it's happening right now, but I think it's the beginning of it. We'll look back and we'll go, wow, 2024 was the year that MMOs really started to take off again, because we are getting to that new tech, and it'll be very interesting. But there's all kinds of situations where it's yours to lose and you lost it.
Yeah.
So we'll see if Blizzard can turn it around, and if companies like Riot can come out with theirs and really bring something new to the floor, or whether it's just the same old, same old, same old. So
very exciting, guys. Well, that will do it for this overly long, but really, I think this is a really good episode of the Maximum News Show. Thank you so much for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure to hit that like button if you like this episode. It helps us out a lot, not just this video, but all the other videos on the Triple S League channel. Leave a comment on any of the stuff that we talked about, whether you agree or disagree with anything that Saib and I said. I want to thank Saib, as always, for doing this show with me. Anything you want to plug before we're done?
No, that's it. We got stuff in the works again. Still recovering from being sick, and I hate it.
Yeah, well, you sound so much better than you have the past couple of weeks, dude. You sound like you're back to normal. If that's any consolation.
Sound like I'm a normal human being and not a monster from the depth. My cats have finally started coming around me again.
Yeah, you don't sound like Kingpin when he's sick. Vanessa! And you guys could just find me on all the... He didn't sound like that. Yeah, you guys could just find me on all the regular forms of social media, just at Max Derrat. If you're a fan of the Dragon's Dogma original game, you might want to go check out my channel, because I just put out a video on that, talking about all the philosophy that underlies that game, especially in anticipation of Dragon's Dogma 2, which is coming out. You might want to check out that video just so you can get caught up. But yeah, that'll do it for this episode, guys. We'll be back next week. And until then, I want to remind you, as always and as per usual, stay yellow.
Goodbye.